The champagne glass shattered against Deborah's cheek before she even registered the movement. Cold liquid dripped down her face, mixing with the sharp sting where crystal had grazed her skin. The rooftop bar fell silent, that terrible, breath-holding kind of quiet that happens right before chaos erupts. Deborah stood frozen, her white blouse now transparent and clinging, her carefully styled locks dripping expensive alcohol onto the polished floor. Mr. Kong Minsik, her boss, swayed slightly, his face flushed red from soju. "Oops," he slurred in English, his voice dripping with mockery. "So clumsy of me. Maybe you should clean that up? Oh wait, you're not at the office anymore." His friends erupted in laughter, though some looked uncomfortable. This was it. This was the moment Deborah had been dreading for 6 months. She'd moved to Seoul with such hope. A marketing position at a mid-sized tech company, a chance to experience a new culture, an escape from the mundane rhythm of her life back in Atlanta. Korea had seemed magical in the beginning. The neon lights of Gangnam, the smell of street food wafting through alleyways, the efficiency of the subway system. She'd imagined herself thriving here, maybe even finding a community. Instead, she'd found Minsik. The harassment had started subtly, comments about her hair being unprofessional, questions about whether she could really understand Korean business culture, assignments given to junior employees while her ideas were dismissed without consideration. Then came the proposition 3 months ago, delivered in his office after everyone else had left. "I can make your time here very comfortable," he'd said, leaning against his desk with a smile that made her skin crawl. "Or very difficult. Your choice?" Deborah SSI. She'd chosen dignity. He'd chosen revenge. Every day since had been a calculated assault on her peace. Impossible deadlines. Public criticism for minor errors while Korean colleagues made major mistakes without consequence. Yesterday, he'd actually thrown her presentation notes in the trash during a meeting, claiming they were garbage anyway. And now this public humiliation at Skyline 63, one of Seoul's most exclusive rooftop bars, where she'd come to decompress after another brutal week. She'd been sitting alone in a corner, sipping overpriced wine, watching the Han River shimmer below, trying to convince herself that tomorrow she'd start job hunting, that she wouldn't let this man break her spirit. But here he was invading even this space. Deborah slowly wiped champagne from her eyes. The old her, the her from 6 months ago, would have caused a scene, would have read him for filth in front of everyone. Consequences be damned. But Korea had taught her something about survival. Sometimes you had to swallow your pride to live another day. She was on a work visa. He had power. She had rent to pay. "It's fine," she said quietly, grabbing napkins from a nearby table. Her voice didn't shake. She wouldn't give him that. "What's that?" Minsik stepped closer, emboldened by her restraint. "I didn't hear you. Speak up." His breath reeked of alcohol. "I said it's fine." Deborah met his eyes, another mistake. In Korean culture, direct eye contact with a superior was disrespectful. She knew this, but her grandmother hadn't raised her to look at the ground for any man. His face darkened. "You think you're better than us, don't you? Coming here with your American arrogance." "Minsika," a woman's voice cut through the tension. One of his colleagues, a woman named Park Jae-hai, touched his arm nervously. "Maybe we should." He shook her off. "You know what your problem is?" He jabbed a finger toward Deborah. "You people always think you deserve special treatment. I give you a job, bring you to my country, and you can't even show basic gratitude. Your country's been real welcoming," Deborah muttered, still dabbing at her blouse. She couldn't help herself. Survival instinct warred with self-respect, and tonight she was tired of losing. "What did you say?" Minsik's voice rose dangerously. "Nothing." She turned away, gathering her purse. She'd leave. It wasn't worth it. None of this was worth it. But Minsik wasn't done. He grabbed her wrist, hard enough to hurt, and spun her around. "When I'm talking to you, you listen." The world exploded into motion. 1 second, Minsik's fingers were digging into her wrist. The next, he was on the ground, gasping, his arm twisted at an unnatural angle behind his back. A man in an impeccably tailored black suit had appeared from nowhere, moving with the fluid precision of a dancer or a fighter. He held Minsik down with one hand, barely exerting effort, while his other hand straightened his silver cufflinks. "I believe," the stranger said in perfect Korean, his voice soft and pleasant, "that the lady asked you to leave her alone." The rooftop seemed to tilt. Several of Minsik's friends had stood up, but they weren't moving to help him. They were backing away, faces pale. The bartender had disappeared entirely. Even the music seemed quieter. The stranger wasn't particularly tall, maybe 5'10", but he commanded the space like he owned it. His black hair was swept back from a face that belonged in a cologne advertisement. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, eyes so dark they looked black in the ambient lighting. But it wasn't his looks that made people retreat. It was something else. An energy. A warning. "Do you know who I am?" Minsik wheezed from the ground, trying to save face even while his arm was being held at a painful angle. "Kong Minsik," the stranger said pleasantly, "CEO of My Revision Tech, recently divorced. 3 million won in gambling debts at the Weizong card room. A son studying at MIT whose tuition you're 2 months behind on." He smiled, and it was terrifying in its warmth. "I know exactly who you are. The question is, do you know who I am?" The color drained from Minsik's face. "Now," the stranger continued, releasing Minsik's arm and stepping back. "You're going to apologize to this woman. Then you're going to leave. And if I ever hear that you've bothered her again, at work, on the street, anywhere, I'll be very disappointed. And when I'm disappointed..." He trailed off, letting the implication hang. Minsik scrambled to his feet, cradling his arm. He looked at Deborah, and for the first time in 6 months, she saw fear in his eyes. Real, genuine fear. "I apologize," he muttered, the words clearly choking him. "Louder," the stranger said softly, and in English. "She deserves to hear it properly." "I apologize for my behavior," Minsik said louder, in heavily accented English. "It was inappropriate." The stranger made a small gesture with his hand. "Continue." I will ensure there are no further issues at the workplace," Minsik added, sweat beading on his forehead. "Wonderful." The stranger's smile widened. "Now leave, and take your friends with you." The exodus was immediate and undignified. Minsik and his entire group practically ran for the elevators, leaving behind half-drunk cocktails and an abandoned karaoke machine. In less than a minute, the rooftop bar had cleared of everyone except Deborah, the stranger, and a few shell-shocked onlookers who quickly found reasons to move to the opposite end of the space. Deborah realized she'd been holding her breath. She released it slowly, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was fading. The stranger turned to face her, and his entire demeanor shifted. The dangerous edge disappeared, replaced by something almost gentle. "Are you all right?" he asked in English, his accent barely noticeable. "Your cheek is bleeding." Deborah touched her face, and her fingers came away with a small amount of blood. The champagne glass must have cut her. She hadn't even felt it. "I'm fine," she said automatically, then laughed. A slightly hysterical sound. "Actually, no, I'm really not fine, but I will be. Thank you for whatever that was." "That was justice," he said simply. "May I?" He gestured to the empty chair across from where she'd been sitting. Deborah's survival instincts kicked in again. This man had just terrified her boss with what seemed like minimal effort. The way everyone had reacted to him suggested he was dangerous. Very dangerous. "I should probably go," she said carefully. "Of course. But please, let me at least make sure you get home safely. And perhaps get that cut looked at." He pulled out his phone and said something rapid in Korean. Within seconds, a woman in medical scrubs appeared from a door Deborah hadn't even noticed. The medic approached cautiously, her eyes flicking between Deborah and the stranger. She gestured for Deborah to sit and began cleaning the small cut with professional efficiency. The stranger maintained a respectful distance, his hands in his pockets. "My name is Yoon Tae-jin," he said. "And before you ask, yes, I'm exactly who you might think I am based on that interaction. But I promise you, I have no intention of causing you any harm. Quite the opposite." "Why?" Deborah asked, wincing as the medic applied antiseptic. "Why did you help me?" Tae-jin considered the question, his dark eyes studying her face. "I was having dinner on the private terrace below. I heard the commotion, and when I came up to investigate," he paused. "I saw a man assaulting a woman who was trying to leave peacefully. That's all I needed to see. You didn't even know what was happening." "I knew enough." His voice hardened slightly. "Men like Kang Min-sik are predictable. They abuse whatever power they think they have, usually toward people who can't fight back. I despise bullies." The medic finished her work, applying a small butterfly bandage to Deborah's cheek. She bowed to Tae-jin and disappeared as quickly as she'd arrived. Deborah stood, still feeling shaky. "Well, thank you, Mr. Yoon. I should." "Please," he interrupted gently. "Let me make sure. You get home. It's late." And after an incident like that, he gestured vaguely. "I would feel better knowing you arrived safely." Every instinct told Deborah to refuse, to run, to get as far away from this man and this entire situation as possible. But another part of her, the exhausted, champagne-soaked, cut-up part, was so tired of fighting, so tired of being strong and careful and strategic. "Okay," she heard herself say, "but just a ride home. That's it." Tae-jin smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "Just a ride home, I promise." What Deborah didn't know, couldn't know, was that this moment, this acceptance of help from a stranger, would reshape her entire world. That the man standing before her, watching her with careful concern, ran the most powerful criminal organization in Seoul. That her boss's debts were owed to Tae-jin's gambling houses, and that her defiant spirit in the face of humiliation had impressed him more than she could imagine. She also didn't know that across the city, Min-sik was already making frantic phone calls, trying to figure out how to fix the catastrophic mistake he'd just made. All she knew was that she was tired, hurt, and for the first time in months, someone had stood up for her. Sometimes that's enough to change everything. Deborah woke up to 17 missed calls and a resignation letter she didn't remember writing. Sunlight streamed through her tiny studio apartment in Itaewon, illuminating the chaos of her life. Empty ramen containers, a pile of laundry she'd been meaning to fold for 3 weeks, her collection of Korean study books gathering dust. Her phone buzzed again. Number 18. She glanced at the screen. My Revision HR department. "Oh, hell no," she muttered, silencing the call. Her head pounded from the cheap wine she'd finished after getting home last night. Or was it early this morning? The events at Skyline 63 felt surreal in the harsh light of day. Had that really happened? Had her boss really thrown champagne in her face? Had a terrifyingly beautiful man really appeared out of nowhere and bent Min-sik into a pretzel? Her phone buzzed with a text. "Ms. Richardson, this is Park Soo-min from HR. We need to discuss your employment status immediately. Please call back." Deborah laughed. A bitter, exhausted sound. Her employment status, right? Because she was definitely the problem here. She was drafting a response that was probably too honest when her buzzer rang. She froze. Nobody visited her. She'd made exactly 2 friends in Seoul. Jamie, an English teacher from Canada who'd moved back home last month, and Mrs. Kim, her elderly neighbor who occasionally brought her kimchi and worried that she ate too many delivery meals. The buzzer rang again, more insistent. Deborah shuffled to the intercom in her oversized Atlanta Braves t-shirt and shorts, her locks wrapped in a silk scarf. "Yobasio? Ms. Richardson?" The voice was male, professional, speaking English. "I have a delivery for you. I didn't order anything." It's from Yoon Taejin Nim. Deborah's stomach dropped. She pressed the video button on her intercom. A young man in a crisp suit stood in her building's entrance, holding an enormous bouquet of white roses and what looked like a large black box. "I don't want it," she said immediately. "Please tell Mr. Yoon thank you, but there's also a letter," the man interrupted politely. "He asked me to tell you it's important, and that you're under no obligation to accept anything if you don't wish to." The fact that he'd included that last part made Deborah hesitate. She thought about last night, about Taejin's respectful distance, his promise to just get her home safely. He'd done exactly that. His driver had taken her right to her building, waited until she was inside, then left without comment. "Fine," she sighed. "Come up. 3rd floor." She threw on a hoodie and tried to make herself look less like she'd been crying and drinking wine in the dark for hours. When she opened her door, the delivery man bowed deeply, handed her the roses, the box, and a cream-colored envelope with her name written in elegant handwriting. "Have a good day, Ms. Richardson," he said, bowing again before disappearing down the stairs. Deborah closed her door and stared at the hall. The roses were gorgeous, easily 2 dozen, their scent filling her tiny apartment. The black box was from a high-end department store. And the letter, she opened it with trembling fingers. "Ms. Richardson, please forgive the intrusion. I wanted to ensure you were well after last night's unfortunate incident. The flowers are an apology for not intervening sooner. The box contains a replacement for your blouse, which I understand was ruined. I hope I estimated the size correctly. I've taken the liberty of making a phone call regarding your employment situation. You should receive a call from a Mr. Han Jae-woo at Summit Group Holdings this morning. They're looking for a marketing director for their international division. I mentioned you might be interested. The decision is entirely yours. I also wanted to extend an invitation to lunch, should you be willing. There's a matter I'd like to discuss with you. Nothing concerning, I promise. Simply a proposal that I think might interest you. My number is below. No pressure. No expectations. Respectfully, Yoon Taejin." Deborah read the letter 3 times. Then she opened the black box. Inside was a silk blouse in deep emerald green, her exact size, from a brand she couldn't afford in a million years. The price tag was still attached. 890,000 Korean wons. Nearly $800. For a shirt. "Oh no," she whispered. No. This was too much. Way too much. She didn't know what Taejin wanted, but men didn't spend this kind of money without expecting something in return. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head. "Baby girl, nothing in this world is free, especially not from men who look like they walked out of a movie." She was reaching for her phone to call him and refuse everything when it rang. Unknown number. Korean area code. "Hello, Ms. Richardson? This is Han Jae-woo from Summit Group Holdings. I hope I'm not calling too early." And so began the strangest morning of Deborah's life. Han Jae-woo was professional, warm, and genuinely interested in her background. Summit Group was one of Korea's largest conglomerates. Think Samsung level. Their international division needed someone who understood both Western and Korean markets, someone who could bridge cultural gaps in their global marketing campaigns. "Your resume is impressive," Jae-woo said. 3 years at a top Atlanta marketing firm, fluent in Korean, experience living abroad. "When could you come in for an interview?" Today," Deborah heard herself say. "I'm available today." By noon, she was sitting in a glass-walled office in Gangnam, dressed in her best interview suit, talking to a panel of executives who actually listened to her ideas, who asked thoughtful questions, who didn't once make her feel like she had to prove she deserved to be in the room. By 1 p.m., they'd offered her the job. Double her current salary, better benefits, a team of 5 reporting to her. "We've been looking for someone like you for months," Jae-woo said, shaking her hand. "When can you start?" Deborah floated out of the building in a daze. This wasn't real. Things like this didn't happen to her. She'd been so focused on surviving Minsik's harassment that she'd forgotten what it felt like to be valued. Her phone buzzed. Congratulations on the interview. I hope it went well. The lunch invitation still stands, if you're interested. Whitey. She should say no. She should thank him politely and keep her distance from whatever world he inhabited. Mafia bosses, because let's be real, that's what he was, didn't help people out of the kindness of their hearts. But Deborah had never been good at doing what she should do. She texted back. Where and when? The restaurant was in Samcheongdong, a quiet neighborhood near the palaces. All traditional architecture and expensive galleries. Tae-jin was waiting at a private table in the back, dressed more casually today. Black turtleneck, tailored slacks, no tie. He stood when she approached, pulling out her chair. Thank you for coming, he said. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure I would either, Deborah admitted. But I figured I owe you a thank you for last night and for whatever phone call you made. I got the job, by the way. His face lit up, a genuine smile that made him look younger. That's wonderful. Though I have to be clear, I only made the introduction. You got yourself that job. Deborah studied him over her menu. So what's this proposal you wanted to discuss? Because Mr. Yoon, I'm grateful, but I need you to know. I'm not interested in anything transactional. Tae-jin, he corrected. Please. And I understand your concern, but I promise this is nothing like that. He waited until they'd ordered traditional Korean dishes she'd never tried before continuing. I want to hire you. I just got hired. Not for Summit Group. For me. Privately. He leaned forward slightly. I run several legitimate businesses alongside my other ventures. Import, export, real estate, entertainment. Venues. They all need marketing, brand development, public relations. And they all need someone who understands how to navigate both Korean and international markets. You want me to do PR for the Mafia? Deborah said flatly. I want you to do PR for my legitimate holdings, he corrected. And before you ask, yes, everything I'm proposing is legal. I have lawyers who ensure that. Good lawyers. Why me? Because you're talented. Because you're not afraid to stand up for yourself. Because you're an outsider, which means you see things my Korean employees miss. He paused. And because I think you could use someone in your corner. Korea can be difficult when you're alone. The food arrived, providing a welcome interruption. Deborah's mind raced. This was insane. She should walk away. She had a good job now, a fresh start. She didn't need to get tangled up with criminals. But that practical voice was drowned out by something else. Curiosity. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of fuck it. What would this involve? She asked. They talked for 2 hours. Tae-jin was surprisingly forthcoming about his operations, or at least the legal parts. He owned 3 upscale nightclubs, 2 restaurants, a chain of PC bangs, internet cafes, and several commercial properties throughout Seoul. All of them needed better marketing, especially to international clients. I can pay you 15 million Korean wons per month, he said, as a consultant, separate from your summit job. The work would be flexible, mostly strategic planning, campaign development, some event coordination. Deborah nearly choked on her tea. 15 million won. That was nearly 13,000 US dollars per month for part-time work. That's too much, she said automatically. It's what you're worth. His tone was firm. And full transparency. Yes, having someone with your background and perspective benefits me. But this isn't charity. I expect results. And if I say no, then we finish this lovely meal. I thank you for your time. And you never hear from me again. Except perhaps a congratulations gift when you excel at Summit, which I'm certain you will. He smiled. No pressure, Deborah. I mean that. She believed him, which was crazy because she shouldn't. But something about Tae-jin felt different. Dangerous, yes. Powerful, absolutely. But not predatory. Not like Minsik. Can I think about it? she asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. They parted ways outside the restaurant, and Tajin's driver offered her a ride home. She accepted, still processing everything. As the car glided through Seoul traffic, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Ms. Richardson, this is Kang Min-sik. I want to apologize again for last night. I was drunk and behaved inappropriately. I've also been informed that you'll be leaving my revision. Please know this is entirely your choice, and we will provide excellent references and your full severance package. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. Deborah laughed out loud. The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror but said nothing. Min-sik was terrified. Absolutely terrified. Which meant Tajin's reach was even more extensive than she'd thought. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mom, calling from Atlanta. Deborah hesitated, then answered. Hey, Mama. Baby girl. I had a feeling I should check on you. How are you doing? You sound different. I'm good, Mama. Actually, I'm really good. Something happened. Something big. She told her mother about getting the new job, leaving out the champagne incident and the Mafia boss part. Her mother cried happy tears, proud and relieved. I knew Korea would be good for you, her mother said. I knew you just needed to find your people. After they hung up, Deborah stared out the window at the Seoul skyline. Had she found her people? Maybe not in the traditional sense. But for the first time in months, she felt like she wasn't fighting alone. Her phone buzzed one more time. A text from Tajin, no pressure, but my offer stands. Also, there's a comedy show in Hongdae this weekend. English and Korean performers. I have an extra ticket if you'd like to come. As friends. I promise I'm not always so serious. Deborah smiled despite herself. A Mafia boss who liked comedy shows, who sent thoughtful texts, who seemed to actually see her as a person, not a commodity. I'll think about the job, she texted back. But yes to the comedy show. I could use a laugh. It's a date. Well, not a date. You know what I mean. Whitey. She did know. And that was the strangest part of all. Despite everything, the danger, the complications, the absolute insanity of her situation, she trusted him. Maybe that would turn out to be a mistake. But Deborah had learned something important over the past 6 months. Sometimes the biggest mistake was playing it safe. Sometimes you had to take risks to find out who you really were. She texted one more message. I'll take the consulting job. On one condition. Name it. Whitey. We stay friends. Just friends. No matter what. The response came immediately. Deal. Welcome to the team, Deborah. I think this is the beginning of something interesting. As the car pulled up to her building, Deborah couldn't help but grin. Interesting was one word for it. Completely insane was another. But after months of feeling small and powerless, she was ready for interesting. She was ready for anything. 3 months later, Deborah was living a double life and loving every minute of it. Mornings belonged to Summit Group. She'd show up to the sleek Gangnam office in her power suits, lead meetings in Korean and English, pitch campaigns that had executives nodding enthusiastically. Her team, 3 Korean women and 2 men from her international division, had initially been skeptical of her. But after she'd saved their luxury watch campaign from disaster by suggesting they feature Korean athletes instead of foreign models, they'd come around. Deborah Nim is scary smart, she'd overheard one of them tell another. She gets things we don't even realize we're missing. Evenings and weekends belong to Tajin's world. She transformed the branding for his club, Aurora, shifting it from generic upscale nightclub to premier destination for international artists and Seoul's creative class. Bookings had increased by 40%. His restaurant in Itaewon, previously struggling, now had a 3-week waitlist after she'd orchestrated a collaboration with a popular food blogger and redesigned their entire social media presence. You're making me look good, Tajin had said during their weekly check-in meeting at a cafe in Seongsu-dong. They'd fallen into a rhythm. Every Thursday afternoon, they'd meet somewhere low-key to discuss business. My investors are very impressed. Your investors are scary, Deborah had replied, thinking about the stone-faced men in expensive suits she presented to last week. They're puppies compared to some people I know. Taejin had grinned. Speaking of which, I need you to plan an event. That event was tonight. A grand reopening for Aurora with a performance by a famous Korean R&B artist, international DJs, and a guest list that included everyone from actors to athletes to, allegedly, members of parliament. Deborah stood in Aurora's main room, checking details with the obsessive focus that had made her good at her job. Lighting, perfect. Sound system, tested 3 times. VIP section, stocked with the premium liquor she'd special ordered. Ice sculptures, strategically placed. She wore a black dress that Taejin's stylist had picked out. Elegant but not too sexy. Professional but striking. You look like you're about to command an army, a familiar voice said behind her. She turned to find Taejin emerging from his private office, looking unfairly good in a dark gray suit. Over the past 3 months, they'd developed an easy friendship. He was funny, genuinely funny, with a dry wit that caught her off guard. He was also thoughtful, remembering small details she'd mentioned in passing. That she missed good Mexican food, that she was teaching herself to make kimchi, that she called her mom every Sunday. I feel like I'm commanding an army, Deborah admitted. Do you know how many egos I've had to manage today? Your DJ almost got into a fistfight with the lighting director. Han Juno, Taejin sighed. He's talented but dramatic. I'll talk to him. Already handled. I told him if he didn't behave, I'd hire his rival for next month's event. Deborah smirked. He got real cooperative after that. Taejin laughed. A real unguarded sound. You're terrifying. I love it. Over his shoulder, Deborah spotted 2 of Taejin's associates watching them with barely concealed interest. She'd learned to recognize his inner circle. Choi Yongo, his second-in-command, was all business and intimidation. Lee Miho handled security and looked like he could bench press a car. Kim Sarah, the only woman in the upper ranks, ran their financial operations and had warmed to Deborah after she'd suggested several tax strategies. But the others, the dozens of men who orbited Taejin's world, still watched her with suspicion. The foreign woman who'd somehow gained their boss's trust. The outsider who sat in on strategic meetings. They're staring again, Deborah murmured. Let them stare. Taejin's voice was casual, but she caught the edge of warning in it. You've earned your place here. More than most of them have. The doors opened at 9 p.m., and Aurora transformed into controlled chaos. Seoul's beautiful people flooded in. Influencers taking selfies, businessmen heading straight for the VIP section, groups of friends claiming tables. The music pulsed through Deborah's bones as she moved through the crowd, troubleshooting problems before they escalated. By 11, the club was packed beyond capacity. The fire marshal would have had a heart attack, but Taejin had people who handled such concerns. Deborah was at the bar, coordinating with the head bartender about their champagne supply, when someone grabbed her arm. She spun around to find a drunk Korean man in an expensive watch and too much cologne. Hey, beautiful, he slurred in English. You working tonight? How much for private time? Deborah's blood went cold, then immediately boiling hot. Excuse me? You heard me. Foreign girls at clubs like this. I know what you do. His grip tightened. So how much? Before Deborah could respond, before she could decide whether to knee him in the groin or read him so hard his ancestors would feel it, the man was airborne. Literally picked up and removed from her vicinity by Miho, who appeared like a very large, very angry ghost. You okay? Miho asked her in Korean, his hand still gripping the man's collar. I'm fine, Deborah said, her voice shaking with fury. But he's not about to be. Wait. Taejin's voice cut through the noise. He'd materialized beside her, his face utterly calm in a way that made her nervous. What happened? The drunk man, finally realizing who he'd angered, went pale. I didn't know she was with you, Yoon SSI. I thought she was. Careful, Taejin said softly. Very careful about your next words. Deborah watched, fascinated and slightly horrified, as the man practically dissolved with fear. This was the side of Taejin she rarely saw, the dangerous side that made powerful people scramble. Part of her wanted to tell him to let it go. The other part wanted to watch. I apologize, the man gasped. Sincerely, I was drunk and stupid. Please. You were disrespectful to my colleague, Taejin corrected. And you made assumptions based on her race and presence here. That's not just stupid. That's unforgivable. Taejin, Deborah said quietly. He's not worth it. Taejin looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded. You're right. To Miho, get him out, permanently banned. And make sure everyone knows why. As Miho dragged the man toward the exit, Taejin turned to Deborah. Are you sure you're okay? Yeah. She took a breath. Not my first time dealing with jerks. Won't be my last. It shouldn't happen at all. Especially not here. He looked genuinely upset. I'm sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. Deborah surprised herself by squeezing his arm. But thank you for having my back. Something shifted in his expression. Something warm and complicated. Before either of them could examine it, Sarah appeared, looking stressed. We have a situation, she said in Korean. The investor from Singapore is here, unannounced, and he brought friends. Taejin switched into business mode instantly. Where? VIP section. He's asking for you. As they moved through the crowd, Deborah whispered, Should I make myself scarce? Actually, I want you there, Taejin said. This investor has been interested in expanding Aurora's brand internationally. Your perspective would be valuable. The VIP section was a whole different world. Bottle service, private booths, a view of the entire club. The Singapore investor turned out to be a smooth-talking businessman named Richard Chun, flanked by 2 associates and 3 women who looked bored. Taejin. Richard stood, all smiles and expensive teeth. Didn't expect the club to be this packed on a Thursday. Impressive. We had a soft reopening, Taejin said smoothly, shaking his hand. Richard, this is Deborah Richardson, my director of strategic marketing. Richard's eyes lit up with interest, the professional kind. Thank God. The one who orchestrated all this? I've been following Aurora's social media. Brilliant work. They talked business for an hour. Richard wanted to franchise the Aurora concept to Singapore, maybe Hong Kong. He had investors ready, locations scouted. Deborah found herself in her element, discussing brand identity and market differentiation, pointing out potential challenges in Southeast Asian markets. You know your stuff, Richard said, clearly impressed. Most marketing people talk theory. You talk reality. I've learned from experience, Deborah replied. The hard way, mostly. By 2 a.m., they'd sketched out the basics of a deal. Richard left with promises to send contracts, and Taejin looked energized rather than exhausted. That was incredible, he said as they watched the crowd from his private office. You just helped me land the biggest expansion opportunity I've had in years. We helped, Deborah corrected. I just asked the right questions. Don't diminish what you do. Taejin poured them both water. Neither of them drank alcohol during work events. You have this way of seeing angles nobody else sees. It's remarkable. Deborah felt her cheeks warm. Over the past 3 months, moments like this had become more frequent. Little sparks of connection that felt like more than friendship. She'd shut them down immediately, remembering their agreement. Friends. Just friends. But lately, she'd been wondering if that was what she actually wanted. Can I ask you something? She said before she could stop herself. Always. Why did you really help me that night? At Skyline 63. Taejin was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know if I can explain it. I saw you sitting there alone, looking so tired but determined. And then when that asshole threw champagne at you, he shook his head. You didn't scream or cry or cause a scene. You just endured with this dignity that made me furious on your behalf. So it was pity, Deborah said, trying to keep her voice light. No, it was recognition. He turned to face her fully. I know what it's like to be underestimated, to have people assume things about you based on where you came from. My father was a street enforcer. I built everything I have from nothing, and people still look at me like I'm just a thug in an expensive suit. Deborah had never heard him talk about his background. I didn't know that. I don't advertise it. He smiled sadly. But when I saw you, this brilliant woman being disrespected by someone who had power over you, I recognized that feeling, and I decided I could do something about it. Maybe I couldn't change my own past, but I could change your present. Tae-Jean. Deborah felt her throat tighten. I'm not telling you this to make you feel obligated, he added quickly. I just want you to know that helping you wasn't about pity or some ulterior motive. It was about seeing someone who deserved better and having the power to make that happen. The office suddenly felt very small. Deborah was acutely aware of how close they were standing, how the city lights behind him cast shadows across his face, how easy it would be to just... Her phone rang. Mom. Because of course it was. I should take this, Deborah said, stepping back. It's late there. Must be important. Tae-Jean nodded, understanding. I'll check on things downstairs. After he left, Deborah answered her phone to find her mother in crisis. Deborah's grandmother, her favorite person in the world, had been hospitalized. Pneumonia. She was stable but asking for Deborah. I need to come home, Deborah said immediately. For how long? Baby, you have a job. 2 jobs now. Her mother sounded exhausted. We'll manage. But Deborah could hear what wasn't being said. Her grandmother was 87. Pneumonia at that age was serious. The next morning, Deborah sat in Tae-Jean's office, his real office, in a nondescript building in Gangnam that housed his legitimate business operations. She'd barely slept, too busy booking flights and coordinating with her Summit Group manager. I need 2 weeks off, she told him. Maybe 3. Family emergency. Done, Tae-Jean said immediately. Take whatever time you need. And Deborah. He slid an envelope across his desk. Please, for your flight, accommodation, anything you need. She opened it to find a stack of cash. American dollars. Thousands of them. I can't accept this, she said automatically. You can and you will. His tone left no room for argument. Your grandmother needs you. You shouldn't have to worry about money on top of everything else. Deborah felt tears prick her eyes. Exhaustion and gratitude and something else she couldn't name. Thank you, she whispered. Call me when you land. And Deborah. He came around the desk, pulling her into a brief, tight hug that somehow made everything feel less overwhelming. Family first. Always. Everything else can wait. Atlanta felt like stepping into a memory. The humidity, the sound of English everywhere, the sight of her mother's face at the airport. It all hit Deborah harder than she'd expected. She cried in the car, surprising herself. You look different, her mother said, studying her. Older, but good different. Her grandmother was in good spirits despite being connected to oxygen. Girl, what did you do to your hair? Was the first thing she said when Deborah walked in. You look like you're about to run somebody's company. I am running somebody's company, Deborah laughed, settling into the chair beside the hospital bed. 2 of them, actually. She spent the next week splitting time between the hospital and her mother's house, video chatting with her Summit team and texting updates to Tae-Jean. Her grandmother improved steadily, stubborn as ever, refusing to stay down. Tell me about Korea, her grandmother demanded one afternoon. And don't give me the tourist version. Tell me what's really going on. So Deborah did. She told her about Minseek, about Skyline 63, about Tae-Jean. She left out the Mafia parts but included the important stuff, the jobs, the challenges, the way she'd finally found her footing. And this Tae-Jean, her grandmother said shrewdly. You like him. We're friends, Grandma. I'm Ham. And I'm 25. Her grandmother fixed her with the look that had terrified Deborah since childhood. Baby girl, I've lived a long time. I know the difference between friends and friends who want to be more. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Nothing, Deborah said firmly. It's complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. Her grandmother squeezed her hand. Don't let fear keep you from something good. Lord knows I wasted too much time doing that. That night, unable to sleep, Deborah texted Tajin. My grandmother wants to know if you're handsome. I told her you're okay looking. His response came immediately. Just okay? I'm wounded. How is she doing? Better. Flirting with her doctors. She'll outlive us all. Good. The world needs more women like her. Like you. Deborah stared at that message for a long time before responding. Missing soul. Missing the chaos. Missing everyone. Everyone misses you too. Aurora's running smoothly, but it's not the same without you terrorizing the staff. I don't terrorize. I motivate through constructive fear. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Director Richardson. They texted like that for hours, drifting from business to random observations to memes. Felt easy, natural, like something that could grow into more if they let it. But Deborah had promised herself, friends only. No complications. No risk. The problem was, she was starting to realize that friendship with Tajin was already a complication. Already a risk. The question was whether she was brave enough to take it. When she flew back to Seoul 2 weeks later, Tajin was waiting at the airport. She hadn't asked him to come. Hadn't even told him which flight she was on. But there he was, holding a sign that said, Scary Marketing Lady, that made her laugh out loud. Missed you, he said simply, taking her luggage. Missed you too, she admitted. They drove through Seoul in comfortable silence, the city lights welcoming her home. Because that's what this was now, Deborah realized. Home. Not the place where she was born, but the place where she'd become herself. I've been thinking, Tajin said as they pulled up to her building, about what you said, about staying friends. Deborah's heart stopped. Yeah, I think you're right. Friendship is important. But Deborah. He turned to look at her, his expression serious. I also think we should be honest about our friendship, which is that I care about you. A lot. More than I probably should. Tajin, let me finish. He smiled softly. I'm not asking you to change anything. I'm just telling you the truth. Because you deserve honesty. And because hiding it felt wrong. Deborah sat frozen. 1,000 responses flooding her mind. She could shut this down. Keep it safe. Keep it simple. Or she could take the risk. I care about you too, she heard herself say. And it scares the hell out of me. Me too, he admitted. But maybe that's okay. Maybe the scary things are the ones worth exploring. They sat there in the car, the weight of admission hanging between them. Then Tajin laughed. A relieved, slightly nervous sound. So what now? He asked. Now? Deborah grinned. Now we keep being friends. But friends who are honest. Friends who see where this goes. Friends who don't run scared. I can work with that. He reached across and squeezed her hand. Welcome home, Deborah. Good to be home, Tajin. As she headed into her building, bags slung over her shoulder, Deborah felt lighter than she had in years. She didn't know what would happen next. Didn't know if this thing with Tajin would become something more, or if they'd stay in this comfortable in-between space forever. But for the first time in her life, she was okay with not knowing. She'd survived Minsk. She'd built a career she was proud of. She'd found her footing in a country that had seemed impossible at first. Whatever came next, she could handle it. And she wouldn't be handling it alone. 6 months later, the view from Tajin's penthouse was incredible. All of Seoul sprawling beneath them. The Han River cutting through the city like a silver ribbon. Deborah stood on the balcony, wine glass in hand, marveling at how much had changed. Summit Group had promoted her to senior director. Aurora had expanded to Singapore and Hong Kong with Tokyo in the works. She'd made real friends in Seoul, other expats, some of Taejin's associates partners, even a few people from her summit team. And Taejin, well, they were still figuring that out. They hadn't officially dated, hadn't labeled anything, but they spent most evenings together, talking about everything and nothing. He'd met her mother via video chat, which had been hilarious and terrifying. She'd learned more about his world. The dangerous parts he'd kept hidden at first. It should have scared her off. Instead, it made her understand him better. Penny, for your thoughts? Taejin joined her on the balcony, 2 plates of food in hand. He'd cooked, something he did when stressed, which meant they ate well whenever business got complicated. Just thinking about how weird my life is, Deborah said. A year ago, I was miserable, broke, getting harassed daily. Now I'm standing in a penthouse, working my dream job, eating food made by a reformed criminal. I prefer criminal entrepreneur, Taejin corrected with a grin. More sophisticated. You're ridiculous. You love it. She did. God help her, she really did. Her phone buzzed with a text from her grandmother. When are you bringing that man to meet me properly? I'm not getting any younger, baby girl. Deborah showed Taejin the message. He read it and smiled. She's not wrong. I should meet her. You want to fly to Atlanta to meet my 87-year-old grandmother. I want to meet the woman who raised you, he said simply. If that's okay with you. Deborah felt something in her chest expand. Warm and terrifying and wonderful. This was real. This thing between them, whatever it was, felt real. Yeah, she said. That's okay with me. They stood there on the balcony, Seoul glittering below them, the future uncertain and exciting. Deborah had learned that the best things in life came from taking risks, from standing up for yourself, from saying yes to opportunities that seemed too good to be true. She'd also learned that sometimes the most important thing wasn't having all the answers. It was finding the right people to figure them out with. Hey Taejin. Yeah. Thank you. For that night at Skyline 63. For everything after. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Thank you for letting me be part of your story. Our story, she corrected. Our story, he agreed. And somewhere in Atlanta, Deborah's grandmother smiled, knowing her baby girl had finally found her way home. Even if home was halfway around the world, in the arms of a man she'd met on the worst night that turned into the best thing. Sometimes that's how the best stories begin. With champagne in your face, a stranger's intervention, and the courage to see where the chaos leads. Deborah wouldn't have changed a single moment.
Hello besties, in this story we learned that never compromise your self-worth for anyone. Stand firm in your dignity even in darkest moments. The right people will recognize your value without you having to beg for it. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places, but your courage and refusal to accept less than you deserve is what truly changes your story. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe and share.